Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. I'm Jeremy Stolliker, the Executive Director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and we've got an incredible show for you today. But before we get started, I want to encourage you, if you're watching this on YouTube and have yet to subscribe to our channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell there. That will notify you when new episodes come online. If you're listening on Mojo 50, our partner, and we're so happy to have the relationship with them. But you're listening and not watching, jump over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel. We're putting different content up all of the time, and so much of it is helpful and intentional. And I would encourage you to sign up there if you haven't. Subscribe. We have, again, a very special show with some very special guests, and I'll go around the room, and I'll begin with this gentleman to my right. This is Tom Fordyce. Tom Fordyce is, among other things, United States Marine, Vietnam, and a great friend of the Mighty Oaks Foundation. Also a board member, flew all the way out here from Texas to spend this day with us, and so excited to have him. One of my great friends, a great friend to our organization, and has mentored many, many young men through our program. So super stoked to have him here. And then I'll introduce Congressman Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. So thankful that you could be with us. Rough day of travel yesterday to get here.
A little stormy, but we made it.
A little stormy, but you made it. Yeah. And I'm sure you need no introduction to our audience, but Congressman, Fox News contributor, sits on the board of the NRA, and really stands for freedom in our country, and thankful for your influence and for spending this time with us. We'll talk some more. And then the founder of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, Chad Robichaux, again, a man who needs very little introduction, but what are we, 9 years? 9 years ago, started the foundation.
Yeah, 2011, we started Mighty Oaks.
Incredible.
And with zero idea
where we would be today.
But, God brought along amazing people like you guys. I mean, as you mentioned, you, Colonel West, also advisory board member, great wisdom and counsel. Tom, you coming along. And so 9 years ago, we started, and here we are. And today's a pretty important day because we're going to be opening, well, we've opened, you guys have been working here, but our National Training Center for Mighty Oaks.
That's right.
It was just a little piece of the big vision that we had.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see it come to life.
Yeah, it's incredible to see it come to life. This is a big day for us. And that's the thing that brings us all together.
Yep.
In about 2 hours, we're going to have a bunch of guests out here and be able to really reflect on what God has done. I was thinking about this morning and all the things that we do through Mighty Oaks. And you and I talk about this often, and our board pushes us on this as well. It's easy for individuals to get credit for what's happened. But really, God has been so good to us. It's incredible. And when we look around, you just can't deny that.
No.
The blessing of God on Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, I mean, from the, when I look back, I just see this perfectly orchestrated plan that, and I've said this before, that I wasn't smart enough to execute and come up with. And just from not only the staff, which we have an incredible staff. We have, I think, 14 staff members now, and 40 to 50 part-time instructors. Yeah. Each one of those people that have come along have just been so intricate, such an intricate part of the plan to execute our mission, which is to serve America's warriors and their families. Also, we're serving first responders as well now. And look at all those people, but then it goes so far beyond that to the incredible supporters that support us financially, through prayer, through encouragement, through outside counsel and advice and wisdom. Yeah. And then people like these two men here, Colonel West and Tom, that came in and just are able to help guide that mission forward, and with just great wisdom and guidance. It's just a perfectly orchestrated plan that has been just so incredible to watch unfold over the years.
Yeah, it's amazing. And looking forward to talking about that. We'll spend a lot of time talking about that today. But I wanted to start with this question. I always find the answer to this question fascinating for military guys. And Colonel West, I'll start with you. And we talked about this before. We did a podcast probably 2 years ago now.
Yes, we did.
And had a lot of these conversations. But give us your history a little bit, and then, through that, what motivated you to go into the military and to really devote yourself to a life of service to our country?
Well, it's very simple. My dad was a corporal in the United States Army in World War II. He was a logistician there because they weren't allowing blacks to be in combat units at the time. But he started out in North Africa, Sicily, and into Italy, and was wounded there in Italy. My older brother was a Marine, and Charlie, the 26th there at Quezon, wounded. He was a combat infantryman. And at the age of 15, my dad challenged me to be the first officer in our family. And that was an incredible thing, because him being a corporal, my older brother being a lance corporal, and he just believed that there was no greater honor than to wear the uniform of the United States of America. And that came from a man that at the time when he wore the uniform, this country didn't afford him all the same rights and privileges. And it was just a true measure of his godly humility, his character, and his honor that he would say that to his middle son.
Yeah.
So I went through high school junior ROTC there in Atlanta, and then went to University of Tennessee and was commissioned 31 July 1982. And there he was on my right shoulder, and my mom on my left shoulder. Mom was a civilian employee for the 6th Marine Corps District headquarters in Atlanta. So I almost became a Marine officer. There was a lot of
close.
I was that close. In your life. I know, being a success, doggone it. You know, I'll get you later about that. But and that just put me on the right path.
Yeah.
And so now my nephew, my dad's, grandson, and my older brother's son, he's a major in the Army, artillery guy, paratrooper, just the same. But one thing I did get a 3-year joint assignment with the Marines at Camp Lejeune, working with the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force and the 2nd Anglo-Co. And that was one of the highlights of my military career.
Yeah.
In fact, we both share a gold wings.
That's right.
A gold wings together, and I've had people ask me, Colonel West was in the Army. What's his gold wings? And I always tell the story. So.
And very few people have been able to achieve master rating for the Army, and then also have Marine gold wings. I think it's maybe like 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
So
he pronounced Camp Lejeune right. In Texas, we say Lejeune.
Most Marines don't say it right.
But you said it right, Camp Lejeune. You said it correctly.
Most Marines can't read.
Well, that's really why I was there at Camp Lejeune, to teach a reading class.
So getting back on topic, if we can you talk briefly? I've heard you talk about this before. I think it's important right now to talk about this. We are in a society that is so polarized over the issue of race, among other things. You talked about your dad, who just wanted to serve and did serve, and you're the same way. I would imagine that there, over your career, has been some pushback and some things you've had to deal with because of race. Having done what you've done and accomplished what you've accomplished, looking at where your dad came from, what's your take on the screaming and shouting and the polarization over race?
Well, it comes
so much
down,
of what's happening right now.
It comes down to two different things. There are people, and Booker T. Washington had a quote that alluded to this. There are some folks that want to try to keep grievances out there in front of people because it gives them a sense of power and control. And I'm talking about folks like an Al Sharpton or what have you. But America is really about equality of opportunity.
Right.
And it says that no matter where you were born, no matter where you come from, here in the United States of America, with your own drive and determination and rugged individualism, you can achieve whatever you want in life.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that we're up against something called the equality of outcomes, where some other people are trying to determine what you can be and what you can have. And really, it is about economic enslavement and not economic empowerment. And that's a very powerful thing, that people want to be able to control others for their own electoral political gain. And I think that is what has happened, in trying to find those divisions along race lines, gender lines, anything that people can come up with.
It's deception, right? I mean,
it's a deception. It's a grand deception. And I think that's what we have to really work on. It's not about political parties. It's about the philosophy of governance that says, what's the right relationship between government and the individual?
Yeah.
Our founding fathers said that the individual was supreme.
Right.
When you look at, your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, salvation is an individual thing. It's not a collective thing. You can't pray me into heaven. I can't pray you into heaven. None of it. We got to make that choice, that decision for ourselves. That's what America's about. But yet you have people that are trying to get us on a different path and, do those outcomes and put us into a collective grouping.
How do we communicate that better to those who are economically enslaved?
Like right now.
Doing this.
And I think that it's so important that we take this message into the inner city communities, where you have seen such a loss of, traditional values. I mean, look at the 2-parent household. and the results of that not being sustained in our inner cities. Look at the failing schools that you have in the inner cities, and look at the despair that leads to the rise of drugs and gangs and things of this nature. And it's all because folks have come in and tried to say that, we'll be the ones that can provide this to you, instead of you being able to go out there and take advantage of the opportunities this country affords, opportunities that men like all of us fought to make sure that people had.
Sure.
I think the military is just such a great example. Well, actually, with Sergeant Major Kent, it was not only a black Marine, but a black
dark green
Marine, who made it to the highest level of the Marine Corps, Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. And so we were driving to see you in the car, and we had this long ride, and I just wanted to ask him, I'm like, in your experience of 36 years in the Marine Corps, what has been your experience with this? And I won't speak for his answer, but he was right in line with us about the opportunities that the Marine Corps gave him. And I think the military is like such an example that could be an example to our culture, because people come from the military from all different walks of life. I came from Southern Louisiana. My grandfather, Jeremy, met my grandfather. He was a very racist man, and I grew up around that, and I never had felt that in my heart myself. But when I was exposed to the Marine Corps and the military, and working with people from different races, different cultures, I immediately seen the equality of man. And when you're going through a school like that, you're just pushing each other, no matter what color your skin is. And then you move on from a school to combat. You don't care about any of that stuff.
No, you don't. And that's the thing that we need to get back to as America.
Yeah.
Tom, you served in a very different time. I came into the Marine Corps in '96. Chad, you came in the mid-'90s as well. So when we came in, it was a peacetime military. And I was looking forward to the opportunity to serve, and I'm thankful that I had that opportunity to serve in Iraq. But I went in a very different time than, let's say, the Vietnam War. What motivated you to serve? I've heard your story. What motivated you to not only serve, but to serve the way that you did? And then talk a little bit about when you came home.
Well, I mean, I wanted to be a Marine from the time I guess I was old enough to be a Marine. I've been thinking about it all my life, and then I turned 18 and I joined in December 1965. That's a long time ago, 54 years ago.
That was a couple years ago.
Yeah, and what's today, June the 10th?
It's
June 10th.
June 10th, yeah.
Okay, well, June the 11th, which will be tomorrow, I set foot on Marine Corps Recruit Depot in California.
No kidding.
54 years ago.
54 years.
Wow. Hollywood Marine.
Wow.
Yeah, Hollywood Marine.
I say that with pride.
Pretty Marines. Everyone understand these guys are pretty Marines, okay? Not like the pine tree guys.
I actually was in Quantico, but anyhow.
But anyway, I wanted to serve my country, always did, and got be able to raise my right hand and serve in the United States Marine Corps.
What's it like to enlist during the Vietnam War, though?
Well, for me,
I mean, that's not a popular time to go into the military.
It was, of course, this was very early on, and I guess the Marines landed in March of '65, and I signed up in December of '65, and a lot of friends, decided to go into college and not go in the military because of the war, but that wasn't an option for me, so I decided to go ahead and go in, and I did, and I got wounded over there and came back, and there was a lot of turmoil. I came back in November of '67, and there was a lot of turmoil in the country because of the war.
Yeah,
I mean, that was when the beginning of Woodstock and all that. The hippies and everything was against the military, and they looked down at people on those that did serve. Fortunately for me, I grew up in a little small town of Katy, here in Texas, and I never did receive any of that negative. They welcomed me home.
Not Katy.
But if I'd been in a big metropolitan city like Houston or Dallas, it might have been different. But the little small community, they were glad to see me home, welcome me home, and knew I had a disability, but they never felt sorry for me, gave me compassion. They said, you got to work catalyst like they did before you left, So and I think that was a big help for me. The community got behind me 100%, and went on to college after that, and then decided I was going to try to be an attorney. I wasn't too good at law school, like my daughter. She was excellent. She's doing excellent in law school. But anyway, that was a very tumultuous time. And getting back, we didn't have the resources available to the military personnel that we do today.
Yeah.
And had we did, I think things would maybe be different. I think some of the 22 a day are Vietnam veterans.
That's right.
Yeah, especially now that they're civilian careers they transition to are ending, and
they can't wait to retire. And they sit on the front porch and they get to thinking about the days in Vietnam, and they look back and they say, "Golly, how did I survive this?" or whatever, and then they just take their lives.
60% of veterans that take their life are over 50. So we think they're young men, but they're not typically young men. They're that generation.
But the hardest step is to get them to a program. Whether it be Mighty Oaks, whether it be boot campaign, Lone Survivor, they don't make any difference. It's just hard for somebody to push, and I was one of them. To say, hey, I want to go do this. But I wish that we'd have had that available to us, and some of those veterans that are taking their life, if they would have had that back when we got home, they probably wouldn't be taking their life today.
So Colonel West, you travel so much and talk to so many people and speak on this. What responsibility do we as Americans have to our veterans? Now, speaking of Vietnam veterans, what happened there is an absolute tragedy.
Sure. We talk about the
way we treat our veterans.
When you talk about suicide rates with Vietnam, 58,000 deaths, American deaths in Vietnam.
Yeah.
But 170,000 now suicides from Vietnam.
Vietnam veterans.
Veterans.
Yeah. Three
times as many have died by their own hand than on the battlefield.
Right.
It's a great lesson. Vietnam, sadly, is a great lesson for organizations like Mighty Oaks to be more responsive to the problem early on. And right now we're at a point where 20 years of war, all these warriors coming back, 23 million veterans in America. We have a responsibility to build this. I believe the VA, they can do. They do some things great, some things bad. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. We could just point it all at them, or organizations like Mighty Oaks, like us, could say, hey, we have a responsibility to serve these warriors coming home, make sure they can transition right, so we don't have the same thing end up happening with our current warriors as our Vietnam veterans.
So the interesting part around that conversation, though, is in Vietnam we did it completely wrong. We've almost overcorrected, I think, in the intervening years, to where we have victimized veterans to a point that we're not helping them anymore. Mm-hmm. We have victimized them, and almost created a welfare caste.
And that's what Carl alluded to a minute ago.
Absolutely. And instead of looking at the opportunities that we can afford our veterans, we're trying to, determine these outcomes. And like you say, you go and you get a bag of pills from the VA, or, here, what check can we give you, instead of really sitting down and getting to know their concerns and what is affecting them. Yeah. And like you say, you go back to the Vietnam War veterans. We still have not corrected that incredible travesty in and of itself. And when you talk about our responsibility as a nation, it goes back to the Gettysburg Address when Lincoln talked about our increased devotion to those who have made the last full measure of devotion. Yeah. We got to do better. One of the things that just really pisses me off, I hate to say it this way, but it does. Mm-hmm. We're so concerned about people that are crossing into the United States of America illegally.
Right.
But we got homeless and jobless veterans. Right here. We got veterans that are taking their lives. Yeah. And we got laws that are protecting people. You're sitting there in an airport and you see folks that are getting on airplanes that are here illegally.
Exactly.
Now, how the heck are you traveling on an airplane in the United States of America and you're illegal? I got to show my ID everywhere I freaking go. Yeah. I can't even come out here to California with my concealed weapons license. But that's the thing. Did not fight to earn that right, but yet someone can come in here illegally. And we got people in here illegally that are getting firearms that are killing Americans.
Yeah.
Come on. So to me, what we need to, it's enough. Yeah. And we need to look at these elected officials and say, maybe you guys need to go home. We really do. This is something that should be a national movement where we say, we're tired of this. We have a constitution, we have rule of laws. And the thing is that we have men and women that took an oath to that constitution. Yep. Those are the most important people in the American society. Yeah. Those people that, were willing to make the sacrifice. You losing your arm, Tom, so that others can have all the freedoms and rights and liberties. Not people coming here illegally. Right. Yeah. So that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Can't even get a news blip when guys being deployed right now. I think most of America does not
know
they forgot.
The war's still going on.
The war's still
they
going
don't.
No. My son's in Afghanistan right now.
But it is not politically advantageous right now because there's nothing that you can use to beat someone about the head and shoulders about. Right. So we don't need to cover that anymore.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we need to take care of the
President's
folks.
last tweet, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have such short-term insights anyhow.
Right.
So
If you were the person responsible for providing care to veterans in the United States, the VA was in the news this last week with the debate over privatization, which personally I think is a good idea. But what would be the best program or best system? How can we best, as a country and then maybe as individuals, support the veterans?
The most important thing, I think, the VA is necessary to be there for the acute illnesses,
Right.
sickness, what have you.
Which is why it was created in the first place.
That's why it was created in the first place. But veterans should not be relegated to go there because you got the common cold.
Right.
Okay, you should be able to go anywhere and be taken care of and get whatever medical services and treatments that you need. I think that we need to, I hate to put it this way, but we need to have more veterans in elected political office. Once upon a time, you could not be in political office in the United States of America if you had not served in the military. You weren't going to be president for certain. I mean, you talk about being commander in chief, but we've gotten away from that. 45 or so years ago, it was between 70 to 73% of people in the House and Senate had taken that oath to support and defend the Constitution and had worn a uniform and put their lives on the line for it. Today, that number's between 15, maybe 17%. And so it ends up, being the self-licking ice cream cone. They are not concerned about the things that deal with the veterans in this community. They're concerned about the things that deal with their own political reelection and their, self-interest and special interests. So I think it's so important that we once again highlight these things. Everyone tuned in last week when it was the 75th anniversary of D-Day.
That's right.
But you know what? What do we do the day after that? And the day after that, just like with Memorial Day. I tell folks, it's not just about Memorial Day. It's the day after Memorial Day. It's all those days in between, that you should be considering. So.
Yeah, with D-Day, it's like, let's not just celebrate it as a iconic holiday or same with Memorial Day. Let's actually pause, and this is a message I give when I speak on Memorial Day, which I'm privileged to do almost every year. Like let's pause and think about what the sacrifice was. What was it that they died for? What was the freedoms they died for? What did those guys storm those beaches and climb those cliffs, knowing that they probably were going to die? What was important enough to do that? And it was the cause of freedom. And what does that actually mean? And how can we live that out every day in honor of that?
No, you're right. And I was reflecting and sharing with people. There's a scene toward the end of the movie, Saving Private Ryan, when Tom Hanks' character is bleeding out and dying, and he brings Matt Damon's character, Private Ryan, close. He says, "Earn this." Yeah. And that's what we need to do every single day. Yeah. We need to earn the service, the sacrifice, and commitment of those men and women that have worn a uniform in the United States of America. And I don't think we do.
It's ironic, on a complete side note, that those two guys who probably hate America present such a great picture of
they definitely have a different perspective, But
maybe hate is strong.
They were acting.
They're good at it.
I mean, just this year, Jeremy and I, we were speaking in Germany at Marine Forces Europe and Marine Forces Africa. And we were actually at an event for Stuttgart there, and we went out and visited Dachau. Is that how you say it, Dachau?
Dachau, yeah.
And man, I was like, every person in Congress and Senate needs to take a tour of this place.
Needs to walk through there.
And remember,
that's right.
And when they barking out these anti-Semitic statements and talking about socialism, and I mean, they need to go visit this place.
Yeah, but think about it. In England now, you can't even teach the Holocaust because people have said that it offends them and it didn't really happen. Yeah. And that is why Eisenhower told them, you have to take pictures so that the day will never come when people say that this did not happen. And here we have come to that day.
Yep.
It's amazing.
My family joined us after that trip, and I took my kids to Dachau. I have a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old, so they kind of went through the whole thing by themselves. And the 11-year-old and the 9-year-old, I gave them a tour. I wanted them to see it, but not see everything.
We should probably say what it is for those who don't know.
Dachau is a concentration camp in Dachau, Germany. It was the first concentration camp. It's the one the others were modeled after. But anyhow, I'm walking with my little kids. So my 9-year-old, we walk through the gate, and if you've ever been there, there's a couple plaques to the liberators, the American Army that liberated there. And we're going through things. My 9-year-old's asking me all these questions, and then we're just walking. He said, "Dad, I don't know why I feel this way." And I thought, all right, well, we're going to deal with the death and all the things he's been exposed to. He said, "I'm just so proud to be an American." This is my 9-year-old son. And I said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "Because all these people were hurting so bad, and the Americans came and helped them." And where have we lost that? Where a 9-year-old, a 9-year-old can understand that.
Governor Cuomo said we've never been a great nation. You know, this is what is happening. These are the type of people that are being elected. But again, it's a reflection of us as a society. How many parents would take the time to do that with their young kids? Yeah. How many parents would even take the time to take their kids to a Civil War battlefield or a Revolutionary War battlefield? We have all of these things that are right here in the United States of America.
But an honest reflection of our history will take us to the right conclusion.
It will.
That Americans have stood for freedom, have done the right thing, and have defended people around the world, and still are.
Still are, yeah. I think it's a sad day, and it's in fact a reality that people in Congress would think it's arrogant of us to say that we stand up for people around the world that can't stand up for themselves. And
think about this. You know, you have the member from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar.
Oh yeah,
who just disparaged our soldiers that were fighting in Mogadishu and Somalia. Well, how do you think you got here?
Right.
Okay. or you had, Rashida Tlaib, who was up there saying that, the Holocaust gave her a calming feeling. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But how do these people get elected in these United States of America, Tom? That's the thing that drives me batty.
Well, Ilhan Omar got elected because the refugee camp that she was part of was not spread out. It was not dispersed, and so there was no assimilation. It created a demographic of the voter base. Mm-hmm. I mean, and how you overturn that? Because she has a voter base.
But how do we accept that? I think that's the question. Well, it happens, but how do we accept it, or why do we accept it?
How do you move forward from that? I mean, I think when we talk about immigration, and particularly illegal immigration and assimilation in our country, do you take a giant population of people and put them in one demographic and voter base? They're not going to assimilate. They're going to maintain the culture that they've always had and not adopt American culture. And then when they vote, they're going to vote under the same ideologies that they always knew. And this is what happened with where in Ilhan Omar's district. Yeah. And it's something that we cannot allow to happen moving forward.
Well, there's two words I use. It's what's tolerated today is accepted tomorrow. And that's what's happening. We're tolerating, and it's being accepted, and we got to turn that around.
I think one of the most patriotic events that I've ever been to in my life is the Walker County Warrior Benefit.
Yeah.
You have to go.
An incredible event that really your family has put on with the folks there in Walker County, Texas. And you just have to go to get it. I don't even know how to say it other than a lot of Americans who love America show up, like a couple thousand of them, sit in a giant metal building.
They overpack the place. I think it could probably take 800, but you have like 1,500 in it.
Yeah.
Because the fire marshal's there.
Yeah, he's freaking out. And raise money for veterans. Yeah. You've been very involved in this your entire life. You're involved with several organizations, including ours. How do communities like yours, but communities across the country, get a hold of that and support the veterans that are local to them?
Well, let me just spin off on that and saying that we started that in January of 2010. And we thought if we could raise a couple of $100, a couple of $1,000 and get a couple hundred people to show up, it'd be awesome. Well, 650 people showed up and we raised $50,000 the very first year, which showed me that Walker County in Texas really supports their veterans and has done so for the last 10 years. And so from that, we've had other communities come to our banquet and they have taken it back, and College Station for one. And General Nettles was one of the first ones that contacted me. He'd come to one of my events, took it back 7 years ago to College Station, and it really has taken off. In fact, it probably raises more money than ours does, but I think they probably have maybe bigger bucks over at College Station. I don't know. But and then other communities have done the same thing. So, and that was where it started, and it's kind of mushrooming out. I wish we could get more communities to do that, because Walker County has shown it can work. And I know there's other counties just as patriotic as Walker County, just they need somebody to lead it and get it going.
What's the heart of that? Is it that you need somebody to lead it? And
they did lead it and going on. I mean, it's just,
and they don't need a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit to do it, right? I mean, that's you guys did.
No, we're still not a 501c3. We're just just to
have a get together and
get together
name a beneficiary.
Yeah, exactly. It works out fine.
And see, that's the greatest thing is that why sit around and wait for, processes and procedures and protocols? Just do it.
We just rolled up our sleeves and did it. You know, and it worked.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that we didn't want to have the cost of that event where nobody could come. So the cost is the same today as it was 10 years ago.
And you get a steak about that big.
Cook
a ribeye steak and baked potato. And,
if you like some good grilled fat, that's I love it. I look forward to that steak every year.
Yeah, it's a good event.
Yeah.
And people look forward. I mean, I've already had people the day after, I think we had in January 24th this year, the day after called and said, let me pay you, I want to table this table next year. So
that's awesome.
I think that Americans generally, and this isn't what we see in the news, but I think generally Americans are pretty patriotic.
They are.
Yeah. And do want to do something. They just don't always know what to do.
But it's always like, your complete goal in doing this was to raise money. And so what's the hard time raising money? Like, what's that do, right? I mean, you look at an organization like Mighty Oaks, who has been a beneficiary last few years of the event. And what's the direct correlation between raising money and actually making an impact? I think sometimes people miss the gap because people look at fundraisers and raising money in nonprofit organizations and they wonder, is this making an impact or not? And one of the things for Mighty Oaks, we always wanted to be I think we have had the ability to just communicate the direct impact through all the lives of people we've touched at Mighty Oaks.
Yep.
I mean, we were talking about today, 2,600 graduates from our legacy program, reached over 100,000 active duty troops in our resiliency program. Today, when scholarships to get people to our legacy programs, $2,500. An event like what you have in Huntsville, it correlates. If we raise $50,000, you're probably better at math than me because you're an Army Marines. That's a lot of guys that we get the scholarship.
That's a whole bunch of people.
It
exponentially increases.
But I mean, that's just not dollars raised. Those are people. Those are individuals. Those are numbers on a spreadsheet. Those are individuals, their families, their lives, their souls that are saved for eternity.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, beyond just helping them, one of the things that organizations like Mighty Oaks does and speaks to what you said, more veterans serving. We challenge our guys not to just get better, but to go back home and serve in their homes and serve in their communities and serve in our nation. To take off that uniform and put on a suit coat or a pair of a work uniform and actually get back and contribute and be contributors and not consumers in this nation. I think we need more of that. And I think that's the effect of people going and supporting that.
Well, it is, I think, because everybody in that room, 1,000 plus people in that room, has either got a brother or cousin or dad or somebody that has served in the military or serving. Yeah. And so they feel like this is part of them giving back to them, for their service. So
huge ripple effect.
It's an awesome event.
What's the role? We talked about this a little bit, but let's talk about personal responsibility for a minute. For a lot of reasons. One is I think we believe fundamentally as an organization that personal responsibility is the key to moving forward. It doesn't matter what's happened to you. But trauma, brokenness, hurt, all of these issues, these are not unique to veterans. Veterans like to put their arms around I've been hurt.
We have veterans have a monopoly on trauma. They have a
monopoly on trauma, but they don't. People are hurt. What's the role of personal responsibility in healing, in hope, in moving forward for our veterans, but also for these underprivileged communities and just Americans generally? We have such a... This has been on my heart and mind. We talked about this so much, is the abortion issue. And I really believe that a big reason people scream so much and are unwilling to have an actual conversation about that is this issue of personal responsibility. Yeah. They reject personal responsibility. Anyhow, we can spend all day on that, but personal responsibility, why is it so important?
Well, I think it's important because if you don't take responsibility for your actions, then you do become a victim, and then you start to look for someone else to, assume the responsibility for what you have done, and then you lose your personhood, and that you have surrendered all your rights and freedoms and liberties, what have you.
Right.
So when I think about personal responsibility, I just tell people, do you want to be a victim or you want to be a victor?
Right.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that we got to make these very simple choices for people to understand. Because once you become a victim, someone else owns you. Once you say that I'm not responsible for my actions and you allow someone else to come in, again, the equality of outcomes, then you have lost your sense of self and direction. And it says in John 16:33 that you're going to have tribulations in the world.
Sure.
But, be of good cheer because I have overcome the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you find the strength and the power of Christianity and in the gospel of Jesus Christ, is that it is about being able to overcome all things. You can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens you.
Yeah.
If God is for you, who can be against you?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a victim. You have to, understand that sometimes you're going to go down in the valley, but when you're down in the valley, freaking, look up and start, ruck up, man, cowboy up.
Yeah.
And start,
ridge line, right?
Yeah, there's a ridge line.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where personal responsibility comes in, because what you see happening now in America is that everyone is told, you don't have to worry about it. We'll take care of it.
Yep.
You a couple of weeks ago, you had the guy that was speaking at Morehouse College, and he's standing there and doing his speech. He says, I'm going to pay for the student debt for the class of 2019. Worst thing could have ever happened. Worst thing. I mean, it would have been better for him to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pick 4 or 5 of you guys. I'm going to get you a job.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
with me.
Right.
But again, now the mentality is I can run up debt.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to come
bail
in
me out.
and bail me out. So now, Tom, this person shows up at your job and they go out and buy, a new Toyota Tacoma 2019 and they really can't afford it. And then they come and say, hey, you need to give me a raise so that I can take care of my credit card debt or my car debt. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't tell you to go out and buy that truck. I didn't tell you to go out and, do whatever. But this is the mentality we're creating. And where did it start? Participation trophy.
I like talking about the participation trophy.
Participation trophy. Kid, my parents would have told me if I'm sitting on the sideline, number one, you're embarrassing me.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, you need to practice harder so that you can get into the game. Not we're going to give you a plastic little trinket.
Right. One of the things that comes to mind, and this is a true story, is if you don't pay your parking tickets on the university, you don't get your grades. These two brothers were going to school at Sam Houston State University, and they accumulated $3,000 worth of parking tickets. So the mother called and said, where's my son's grades? Well, they got $3,000 worth. Well, she runs up there and she pays the $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
They said, why did you do this? She said, because I sold their car and bought them 2 bicycles. So
That's a good mom.
That was a good mom.
That's
so
right.
With the credit goes to a lot of these mothers and women. I'll tell you, they've done a fantastic job. And she's one of them. I admired that lady.
There you go.
My deal with, and Jeremy and I talk a lot about this, my deal with personal responsibility, which is a kind of a central point of our process and our methodology, our program, is just it's the truth, and it's the hard truth for people to digest sometimes. You can't change the past, and you can't change other people. If you can't change the past and you can't change other people, regardless of what happened to you in your life and your past and the circumstances around you, as terrible as those things may be sometimes, because I think people are okay accepting personal responsibility sometimes unless they feel wronged, and then they have a hard time. That's what we see with veterans, because like, hey, this happened. I lost my friends. I had to do something in Afghanistan that I lost my arm in Vietnam. Like, these things are tragic. And so they look at those things behind them and they say, because of that, now I'm going to blame the world around me. And the truth is, you can't change those circumstances. You can't change the past, and you can't change other people. And so in that, the only way to move forward is to take personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things we say is, okay, look at this situation in your life. You can't change what happened to you, but you can change how you respond to it.
That's
you can
right.
take responsibility for that. I can't change what happened to me in Afghanistan, but I can change how I respond to it moving forward. That for me in my own life was the probably center point of moving forward. And then of course my relationship with Christ and being mentored in biblical manhood was the route that I chose to take moving forward and made a decision to, which helped me recalibrate my life. This is a big thing, and one of the kind of token things we say is, even if you only had 10% responsibility, we have guys like, look at the situation, let's say you only have 10%. 90% of the situation was related to other people, but you only own 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So take 100% of that 10%
Mm-hmm.
and own that and move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. We talk about the participation trophy all the time. That's an illustration I like to use.
I told you, you pull
So
a
then,
string.
I'm coming back to it because I got a good story. So like 3 weeks ago, my little kids, my younger kids, are both playing flag football in a league here in the city, and they had a good time. They're not very good. So my son, my 9-year-old, they lost every game last season, every game. The last game of the season, it's one of those where as a parent you want your kids to be happy, but you also want them to lose so you don't have to come back the next week and watch another game, right? I'm not proud of that, but that's how it goes sometimes. And so my son, their team lost 38-0 the last game of the season. So they lost every game up to that point, lost by 38 points. The game was over. He came running up to me. He's 9 years old. I said, Dad, guess what? We're in the playoffs. How in the world are you in the playoffs? You guys are terrible. You've lost every single game. What do you mean you're in the playoffs? Like, no, seriously, we're playing next week, the playoffs. There's a loser's bracket and we're in. What are you talking about? If you get a participation trophy, you can walk that in the house and take it to the trash can because that's not how we play here.
Right.
But that's the problem, right? It's a cultural issue that says if you just show up,
You get
that's
a trophy,
good enough.
That's why I love
success.
wrestling. That's why I love wrestling. Wrestling tournaments build character, and man, I mean, Dan Gable said it. Once you wrestle, you can do anything else in life. Because when
It's
you
so
go to
clear who wins and who loses.
well, you learn how to lose in wrestling because you show up. The bracket is single elimination. Round 1, 50% of those kids go home. They worked hard. They bust their butt. Now they have to look down at the ground, and then at some point they have to lift their head back up because it's hard. It's a hard sport. And round 2, 75% of the kids are gone. Single elimination brackets really test. And if you stick to wrestling, you're gonna.
Well, that's why I love March Madness, because in March Madness, 68 teams go in, and you know what? You can be the number 15 seed. You can knock off a number 2 seed, and they got to go home. I mean, it's not like they go down to a loser's bracket or whatever. But the interesting thing about this is what we're doing to our young people is that we're telling them that everything is going to be given to you.
Right.
That there's never going to be a hard day.
Right.
And there's never going to be any adversity. So that when they do come up against adversity, they melt.
Yeah.
Which is why they come up with the term snowflake.
Yes.
You know. And on top of that, a lot of these young people aren't able to cope and deal with it.
Yes.
And what do they end up doing? They take their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Over things that you would say, you know, this was a temporary problem.
Yeah.
But you went and took a permanent solution. And so we cannot grow a next generation that is totally risk averse.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're headed towards.
And that's what we've developed.
Free college, free this, free that. You know, everything is given to you. So what happens when, you know, you actually got to go out and earn this? You got to work hard for it.
And this is why we're
taught to the next generation, right? You say this a lot, and we need to be able to demonstrate our successes to the people around us, our families, our children, the people who look up to us. Demonstrate your successes and be proud of your successes.
Or failures.
But also demonstrate your failures.
Look at Harry Truman.
Know it's okay to fail.
Look at Harry Truman. How many businesses did Harry Truman fail at? You know? But then the next thing you know, he got elected to Congress, and on this one commission, he showed himself to be very astute. And the next thing you know, he becomes a vice presidential, candidate. And the next thing you know, he becomes president.
And he drives himself home in his own car.
He drove himself home in his own car when he lost it. I mean, just the humility of it.
Yeah.
But he never saw himself as a victim.
Right.
Yeah.
But because of this kind of cultural upswing, I guess, as we're teaching our children, this is why now we're able to have a conversation on socialism. And this is why there is such it's a war. It's a war of ideas, a war of ideals.
Yeah. It's an ideological war.
With real consequences.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're able to have this conversation because for the last 25 years, 30 years, we've been telling kids, it's going to be okay. You're going to win. It doesn't matter. Just show up. It will be given to you. You don't have to try that hard. And here we are.
When parents fail, it's someone else's fault.
Yeah.
And like I said, you should be able to.
But how does that always end up? You're either a victim or you're a victor.
Right.
That's just the bottom line.
That's simple.
So when we talk about a lot of these things, again, Chad mentioned we were in Germany. My wife is German, and so we spent some time with her family while we were there. And her German family they can't understand America, right? Like Donald Trump is the devil, and they just don't get all of it. And we have these conversations. One of the questions I think we should at least spend some time thinking about is what happens if America loses the ideological battle? What happens if we forget what freedom is? What happens if we no longer lead here? What does that do to the rest of the world?
You go into a new dark age. You really do. I mean, because America has always been a beacon of liberty and freedom and individual rights. And if that goes away, then where do people go? I mean, everyone has come to the shores here because they found that respite away from tyranny. But if tyranny takes over here, then where you go?
Right.
I mean, that's why Abraham Lincoln said that this is the last best hope for mankind.
That word hope.
Yes.
Why are they storming the border?
Hope.
When I lived in South Florida, I always told folks, I've never seen anyone get on a boat and go to Cuba.
Tie trash together and try to float across, hoping they're going to hit it, right?
No, everyone's coming here.
Yeah.
I see no one leaving Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, going to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Or going to Nicaragua.
Yeah.
No.
So why are they coming here? I would prefer them to knock on the front door.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're still trying to come here.
Right.
For a reason.
For a reason.
And if that reason changes, it's a scary place for the world.
That's why we got to fight.
This week we're taking a team to Ukraine to do, it's actually a family camp for Ukrainian soldiers and their families. We did this last year. It's an incredible opportunity. But they're engaged right now in a very real war.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not talked about anywhere. But these folks are on their border, which has been moved by Russia, and they're just trying to hold ground. So they're engaged in a battle, and they're going to come off the front line. They get a month off. They're going to pick up their families. They're going to come out to this camp. We're going to talk about trauma. We're going to talk about pushing forward. We're going to share hope and help with them. But the story there is incredible. 2014, there was a revolution. Russia started to push across the border. The Crimean Peninsula was taken. And citizens, they didn't have a military to speak of. Citizens got in their minivans, grabbed whatever they had, rushed to the border without medical supplies or food, and did their best to hold off Russia. The chaplaincy was born. What's that?
Is it hunting rifles?
Hunting rifles. The chaplaincy was born when local church pastors did food drives and medical supply drives and took those to the border as well. And when we were there last year, it was almost like watching the American Revolution unfold.
Yeah.
Now, it's not quite that dramatic, and it's not exactly that, but their love for freedom and liberty and their willingness to pay the price that's required. And here, we've lost so much of that. We're going backwards when other nations are doing everything they can to fight for what we've had since the first folks landed on the shores of the United States.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing.
Yeah. The human nature is just quickly discontent.
People have become complacent.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we talk about poverty in the United States of America, but we saw poverty in Afghanistan, or you saw poverty in Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, poverty is when you got to go out and find water.
Right.
Poverty is when you're sitting up saying, where am I going to get, the next meal? But, folks sitting in Section 8 housing with a big screen TV and able to go and get their nails done and everything, that ain't poverty, for the rest of the world. So we have become spoiled. We have become complacent. And we're not used to facing any real adversity whatsoever. We just had a flyby. We just had a flyover.
We're all trying to pretend it happen. I'm glad you said something.
So we have an airport nearby, in case you didn't know.
But I think that this is a real testing moment, because there's a cycle in democracy where people get to a point where all of a sudden they have become so comfortable in everything, and they start looking at people, the elected officials, to provide them more public benefits instead of going out and working hard for it. Think about this in America, Tom. Once upon a time, you had to go out and hunt to get your own food.
Right.
Yeah. Well, now you can sit at home and order your groceries and they're delivered to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I heard Walmart's fixing to start doing that. They bring them to you.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we have gotten so lazy, we will not pick up our own freaking butts and go to the daggum grocery store.
Do they call it Grubhub or?
Yeah, Grubhub, and get our own.
Not an endorsement.
I mean, Uber Eats.
Yeah.
You call McDonald's and they call Uber and they bring the food to your house.
Oh, yeah.
Daggum.
I don't consider that lazy. I just consider that I'm glad to be an American.
You ever see
I understand innovation and everything, but again,
I would say yes.
think about where we have come.
Right.
And we're only turned 43 years of age.
Yeah, that's it.
And think about where we have come.
You see that cartoon Wally?
No.
It's basically the same story, but it's taken hundreds of years forward, and everyone's so lazy that they're in these chairs, and the body adapts to only have 5 bones, like a body bone, arm bones, and leg bones.
We're getting close.
They're so lazy.
We're getting close.
And the other thing, I went back and I looked at our yearbook from the time I was in kindergarten to the time I graduated from high school, and there may have been 1 or 2 at the most that were overweight, but all the kids today you see are overweight.
It's incredible.
I mean, it's just overweight,
It's incredible.
They've taken away PE and all these other things because we used to love to go out and play and do all that. But
Well, I mean, the kid, they got real strong thumbs.
Yeah.
That's all they said to do.
They're moving us forward on their thumbs.
Yeah.
Tommy, what's the most important issue in America today from your perspective?
Well, I think the Colonel hit on it a few minutes ago, is we need to start getting more veterans back in our Congress and Senate. And I guess with the first step, we got, I think his name's Dan Crenshaw, Navy SEAL.
Good man.
He'll be speaking at our gala in November. A little commercial.
And I just, I don't know him, hadn't met him. I've heard him talk, and I think he's a rising star in the Republican Party. And I think that's going to be a big step to turn things around, is to get more people like himself to get up and vote and step up.
It's the most important issue in America.
It may sound simplistic, but I really believe this: voter ID. I think without voter ID, we're not controlling our who ends up in office, and it's just terrifying to think that we could have ballot harvesting in places like right here in California, and voter fraud, and it may not seem like it's such a huge issue, but I think it affects every area of our future.
Yeah. So it's the most important from your perspective.
Either we go back to a system of education or we continue with a system of indoctrination, because that is what is affecting the United States of America. When you look at what is happening on our college campuses, our high schools, down into our middle schools, we're not teaching and educating our kids, we're indoctrinating them.
Yeah.
Very good.
Indoctrination. Yeah. So with that, here's the last question. Well, I've got 2 more questions. All things considered, are you hopeful, Chad, for America?
I am hopeful.
And why would you be? With all these things we talk about, why are you hopeful?
The reason I'm hopeful is I kind of get behind the veils look. I get to travel around the country and speak to, we were saying this when we ordered some coffee this morning, just some great people in this country. I think we see a loud, boisterous few who stomp their feet and cry like babies, and the news cameras are happy to put a camera in front of them. But the truth is, America still is a grateful nation who loves our warriors, their nation of patriots, and who believe in America. And while this may seem like a popular ideology to socialism, things like that, I don't believe it is the will of the American people. Yeah. And I do believe that enough is enough, and people are going to start kind of rising up and getting behind their beliefs and behind America.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful because of that.
Colonel West?
Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, Little Round Top, Day 2 at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Simple professor of rhetoric, in charge of a regiment there. Confederates attacking up the hill, runs out of ammunition, casualties mounted. He said, fix bayonets. I'm always hopeful, because that's what Americans do.
Well, I have a lot of hope, and it's not coming from my generation. It's folks like Chad and the Colonel and yourself and Brandon and Marcus Luttrell and Morgan Luttrell and folks like that. I mean, it's coming from that generation that gives me hope, not from the past. Because there's a whole lot of folks just like the 4 of us sitting around here in this room that's out there. That's what gives me hope.
Yeah. What's the most important thing you're working on right now? Most important thing.
The most important.
You're engaged in all kinds of stuff, so you probably can't pick the most important thing.
Golly.
Being a board member for Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, and well, I serve on a lot of boards, and
But this is your favorite. This is your favorite.
I don't want to limit myself just to one. My main focus is to help, and Brandon and I were talking about this earlier. I got involved with this probably in 2009, and the more I can help veterans, that's my biggest push right now.
Yeah.
And one of the things one of the boards that I sat on is the Texas Prison System Board, and Governor Abbott put me on that board 3 years ago. And there's a lot of veterans incarcerated in Texas right now, and so there's programs that I've been involved with, reaching out and helping those veterans that this just isn't the end of the line. There's some hope after you get out of here.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we've taken, and one of the things that and you're getting back to the faith-based thing, there's some guys at some of our units that are probably the baddest, worst guys you've ever seen, will never see the light of day, but we've initiated a program that they can go and become a pastor. You go through a 4-year seminary program.
Yeah.
And then we've taken those guys and moved them to different units. There's 104 units around the state of Texas, and moved them around. And so those guys know that that's the way to go. It's through faith.
Yeah.
And it's turned them around. And so that's at the bottom of the barrel. So if they can turn their life around and others around, I think that's good. And so we're helping those veterans in the prison system. And it just kind of reaches, it just keeps multiplying. So
that's awesome.
So of course Sharon says any more divorce, she's going to divorce me, you know, but I mean, the more I can serve on and help, that's what I want to do.
Colonel West, what's the most important thing to you right now that you're involved in?
Just trying to spread the word of liberty and freedom. That's the thing, and remind people about what it means to live in this great nation, and that progressive socialism is not the answer for the United States of America. It is constitutional conservatism.
Yeah, that's right. Jeff?
First of all, my wife's not in here, and she probably won't listen to this, so I'm not trying to win any points here. But I'd say the most important thing for me is, and it's a lesson I've learned through Mighty Oaks, is the investment in my family. I think as I look at the world, the failing families in America are, you know, a major part of the turns for the worst in this country. And so I can't do the work that I do without the stability of my own family and home, and that's what we preach at Mighty Oaks.
Yeah. And
so I need to do that in my own home. So that's where I've put my primary focus.
Yeah.
And that's through learning and wisdom. Actually, you know, the guidance of watching you, Jeremy's. I'm one of the most incredible husbands and fathers I've ever seen.
Don't ask my wife. She's not gonna watch this.
I know her, so I know that too. But so that's the most important thing I can do right now. It builds the foundation for everything else I'm going to do.
Yeah, awesome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for gathering. We got a big day in front of us.
Yep,
and excited about celebrating what God has done here.
Yeah,
and we're going to do it. For those of you watching, thank you for watching. We look forward to spending more time with you. And to do that, you need to subscribe to the page. Hit that button to notify you when new episodes come online. And we look forward to the next time we are together. Thank you.